Well, we'll begin our news segment with something that is hopefully not news to anyone watching this. Arsenal are champions. We'll say it as often as we can for as long as we can. But I guess along with that comes a parade, right?
Yes. On Sunday, the 31st, Arsenal will be having a parade, 2 p.m. London time. Adjust your own personal clock accordingly. They'll be having a parade through North London. The map wasn't entirely clear. It looks like they're just doing a giant loop around North London, but I can't really get a good sense of a starting or ending point, at least on the map. Let me look a little more closely. I assume the Emirates is part of that, though, so that's probably where it ends up. But they'll have the parade. For those of you who, like me, will not be in North London on Sunday, it will be streamed through the website, through the app, on YouTube, on various other platforms that the club has access to. So just kind of, it'll be very interesting. Obviously, regardless of what happens Saturday, this is a season worth celebrating, Premier League champions. But there is a chance there's a second trophy that's going to make an appearance on Sunday. So that obviously just adds to the atmosphere of the whole thing. But yes, parade coming on Sunday. So, enjoy it, Gooners, regardless what happens on Saturday. Enjoy the celebration to come on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm looking at the parade route. I do wonder, I know how close Spurs Stadium is to the Emirates. Are they going to circle around Spurs Stadium just to kind of rub it in? It doesn't look like
No, there's no need. There's no need for that. Holding the trophy is quite enough. If we're doing that, then the parade would basically make a giant loop around all of England. Because boy, we've got receipts. That's all I'm going to say.
Now that you bring it up, maybe that's deserved. So one thing that I wanted to bring to the show this week, there was, a bunch of wrap up type articles happening. I think this particular one was between the Burnley and Crystal Palace matches. So Crystal Palace hadn't happened yet, but this was from what was this? This is an ESPN article. This was written by Ryan O'Hanlon, and he just kind of went over a bunch of key stats that he feels kind of tell the story of Arsenal's Premier League season. It's interesting for anyone who's a stats person interested in looking at that. There were a few that I wanted to call out. So the first one is across the season, we conceded 27 in XG, which is super, super low. Now, we actually conceded 27 real goals, which I guess says something about XG as far as how accurate it may or may not be. But I mean, it's nuts. I'll try and put the chart in. But basically, we conceded about 27, and then the next lowest was Manchester City with 43. That's how much better our defense is than the next closest competitor, and it's all up from there. Burnley with the highest at almost 73 XG conceded. But so that was cool, and along the same lines, they talked about great chances conceded, which I guess are XG events over 0.33. So when you're at least a third likely to score from it. So we only conceded 15 of those over the season. Our next closest competitor, interestingly, was Brighton, but again, they had 29. We had half as many conceded as them. So yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's an interesting stat to look at when you see it in the aggregate rather than just for any individual game or something.
Right, and that's kind of the point. We look at those stats like XG, and we see how many times teams over underperform those. And honestly, to me, it's crazy to see how close our actual goals conceded is to our expected goals. Mm-hmm. Because we can all point to various individual instances. Take the goals we conceded against Manchester United in that loss. Those were pretty low XG events, and they all turned into goals. On the other hand, take the save Raya had on Fernandes right in the end of the West Ham game. That was a very high XG opportunity, and it got nothing out of it. So, yeah. Right. And an individual moment, they don't tell you much. But as you start to stretch out towards the aggregate, and again, everyone calculates these things just a little bit differently. So you go to different sites, and they have different numbers. I mean, take Man City's 43 expected goals allowed. On the season, they conceded 35. So you could argue that they actually slightly overperformed their XG defensively. And just quickly looking at the third team, Manchester United conceded 50 goals on the season. Where are they on the list? Their XG is 48, so close.
Yeah.
And then the freaking Burnley, 72.
73 is 72.95. It's practically 73.
And they conceded 75. So as you start to stretch out over the course of the season, you can start to see that. And there's generally going to be a fair amount of correlation between results and goal difference, although it's kind of interesting to sort of look their way through. You can see Sunderland finished -6 on goal difference and finished 7th. Whereas Chelsea was +6 and finished 10th. So, the league was very bunched together, and you're going to see a lot of that in terms of the analysis of the league this season. And you can look and go 85 points. That doesn't feel like a lot. I mean, yeah, but we don't have the kind of City and Liverpool, even Arsenal from 2 years ago, those kind of teams that were breaking 90 points. Like, that's unusual. And so 85 is a pretty solid haul. I mean, we only lost 5 times all season.
Right.
Which is just incredible. And yeah, the defense is the spine of it. And it obviously draws a lot of punditry, handbrake on, and, set pieces only, dour, defensive, boring, physical. But, I mean, part of it is, and I think this was, the quote was attributed to Harry Maguire, but I've heard it in other contexts, it is just so hard to score against Arsenal. Like, it is just this kind of superlative effort it takes to create one of those opportunities. And I think some of those numbers in the aggregate, we beat City by 7 points. Mm-hmm. In the end, it wasn't really that close.
Yeah. So you wonder, and I don't think they'd ever admit this, but you wonder to what extent they just kind of gave up after the Bournemouth draw. Like, okay, whatever.
I mean, it's kind of interesting, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Like, yeah, the draw to Bournemouth. At that point, they only have the one game left, which is the Villa game. But of course, it was also a home game with the final game for their famed manager. Do we want to just talk about that now?
Yeah, may as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was announced. I mean, look, we talked about this back in December. So this isn't exactly news. This has been a rumor that's been floating around for at least half the season, if not longer. Pep Guardiola will no longer be the manager of Manchester City as of the end of this season. He is not retiring, although he's probably certainly made more than enough money that he could pretty easily, but it's stepping away from Manchester City. I don't believe they've officially announced that it'll be Enzo Maresca, but I thoroughly expect it'll be Enzo Maresca taking over as manager there at the start of next season. It's kind of wild. I mean, how long he'd been at City for 10 years, which is a fair amount of time, but kind of interesting that he makes the choice to step away. There's some speculation this may be connected to a ruling connected to the 115 charges against Manchester City. Of course, we don't know that. Of course, that case came in, 3 years ago, and we still haven't heard anything. So who the hell knows? What comes first, a verdict in the decision or the heat death of the universe? Stay tuned. Yeah, it's a fascinating change. It's interesting that story popped up right on halftime of the Burnley game on Monday. And of course, I'm watching, not my usual place, but I was watching in a different bar. But of course, in the bar setting, you can't hear the commentary quite as well. But every time you got some commentary popping up, it was commentary about Pep. And it was a little like, wait a minute, we're playing a game here right now.
Yeah.
Choking the life out of Burnley, but still. But yeah, it is really something. That is the end of the line for Pep. It really kind of makes that last Villa game for them kind of interesting. It's Pep's final game. It's final game for Bernardo Silva. Sounds like Rodri. No, I think he's still playing. But like, it's a time of transition for Manchester City, and it's kind of interesting that they wouldn't. I mean, honestly, I'd peg that one as their win all along, even when the title was still potentially on the line. I just kind of figured Villa would go nowhere, given they'd be coming off of their European final.
Right.
But no, apparently not. Apparently they go out and beat Manchester City in the final day. which is kind of
Well,
fascinating.
what strikes me, we're talking about Pep leaving and those other players, right? This seems to be very prescient on Arsenal's part. That was one of the things they talked about with that 5-phase plan was getting the ball rolling 6 or 7 years ago when they did with Arteta, because they saw that there was going to be this opportunity with Manchester City and Liverpool waning. And it looks like the prophecy may be coming to fruition, where this could be the beginning of a boom for us, where if we're able to hold on and keep the players we have and maybe fortify a couple weak spots and build a little more depth, this could be the beginning of, a dynasty like what City has had,
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, and there's been a little bit of that sort of, who's the favorite for next year already, and it's hard. It's hard right now, obviously, absence, the full summer transfer, and obviously all the World Cup stuff. Yeah, City's going through transition. Liverpool's still going through transition. Chelsea's obviously going through various transitions. Manchester United's going through their Spurs wishes they could have a transition right now. Then there's the other clubs, the Bournemouths, the Brentfords, Brightons, all the Bees. I mean, even an Aston Villa or a Newcastle. Who's really the main challenger right now? Arsenal. One thing, and this was talked about even 4 or 5 years ago when this was getting started. Arsenal was gathering players who were all going to be in sort of that peak, athletic peak that we talk about their ages, right? 24
Right.
to 28, who were all going to be reaching that moment at about the same time. And kind of, it was always a sense we were going to be a little bit chronologically behind where Liverpool and City were going to be. City's an interesting one because they just went, think about in January, they just went and bought Antoine Semenyo and Mark Gahey just like that. Like, what are you going to do about that? But Liverpool, made a conscious choice to hold on to some of these players, Van Dijk, Konaté, Salah, and kind of squeezed every last ounce they could out of them. And now they're kind of left, they underwent a massive attempt at transition last summer, and for various reasons, it didn't quite work out. Now,
Right.
I don't think they're a lost cause. I think there's a lot of talent on that team and a couple of good moves, and they could be right there too. But they kind of got to prove that, don't they? So
right.
Yeah, we might be in a phase right now, but we're kind of we're playing the role of the big dog. And again, who knows psychologically how much it helps us that we actually did do the job this season. I mean, where is this club psychologically if we don't win the league? And now we're on 4 years, maybe coming in second. I mean, that's you start to ask those questions, right? Can you actually win the league? And that's so in a sense, like to be able to do it when we did this year, it does kind of open up those opportunities and kind of acts as the proof of concept to a lot of those things they were talking about. Yeah, this team has always been good for the last few years. Anyone who doesn't want, says Arsenal's not that good over the last couple of years does not know what they're talking about. They're either a fool or it's just banter. It's just noise.
Willfully ignorant.
But there is a thin but very obvious line between being a good team, a great team even, and being a champion. Like that's that is in some ways the hardest step to take. And so who knows? I mean, with some other clubs in transition, with the core of players we have, we might be looking at that kind of thing. And we might be in a place where that's it. But obviously, a lot of things can happen between now and even the start of next season, this time next year. Who knows? But it's hard not to feel good about where we are coming into all of that. And Pep leaving, I mean, you couldn't necessarily have you certainly wouldn't have predicted that 5 years ago. But at the same time, I mean, he doesn't, 10 years is both a long time and not very long time. He's not Alex Ferguson. He's not Arsene Wenger. He's not going to spend 20 plus years at a club. Nobody does that anymore.
Right. So talking about Arsenal's season and kind of how things have shaken up, you shared an article with me about did we want to be as strong defensively as we are, or at least comparative or relative to our offense? And maybe that wasn't entirely on purpose. Well, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and so this was a Michael Cox piece from The Athletic from yesterday. Headline: Arsenal haven't been defensive this season. They just haven't been as good in attack as they hoped. just kind of a wordy way to just sort of say a lot of things we've been saying all season. How much of this, and I know Arteta gets a lot of criticism, and look, I think there have been moments where we've looked a little stolid offensively, haven't quite really pushed on or been as aggressive as you might like, but it talks a little bit about the tactical changes that Arsenal's been facing, but also just we talk about the injuries, right? Burnley was the first game this season where we got to start Odegaard, Havertz, Eze, and Saka all at the same time. I mean, if those are supposed to be your best 4 offensive players, we got 1 game in the league out of them. 1.
Yeah.
That's obviously going to have an impact on, what you're on how you play. And, in a sense, it's sort of nice to see that now. Obviously, I think winning the league had a little bit to do with that kind of change in tone from some people. But yeah, I think it also speaks as well. Like, our leading scorer was Gyökeres, who had a nice season, but nobody thinks he was particularly great. You could argue that the Arsenal team that ended 2 years ago, and I think Cox makes this point, or someone did. I've read a lot of pieces about this over the last week. So, yeah, I mean, you look at the team they had a couple years ago, the one that took City down to the final day. I mean, it's perfectly reasonable, fair point to make that team might have been better than this one, given the way they closed the season, not just coming 2 points in, but I mean, we remember the way they were just ripping teams apart in January, February, into March. That, like, in a sense, how does Arteta want Arsenal to play? I think that's what he wants.
Well, right.
I think what we got was kind of making the most of what we had, which, to be fair, was a lot and was very good. Like, this isn't some plucky underdog story. This is a very good team coming good. But
well, I think also part of it has to be, though, how Arsenal is built from the ground up on defense. Like, everything else is on top of that. Every player from the back all the way to the front has some defensive responsibility. They are expected to track back and always be on defense when not in possession, like 100% of the time, which that has to contribute. Like, even when we don't have our best players, the players we have are going to be, even if they're not productive as far as our own goals, they're going to be defensive, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you talk about the spine of the team up the middle, but also just take a look at the conversation surrounding players of the players of the year or team of the year. Who are the names that keep getting thrown out on like a Premier League team of the year from Arsenal? It's David Raya, it's William Saliba, Gabriel, and Declan Rice. Now, a lot of that has to do with the injuries up top. It's not, no one is going to pick Gyökeres, but I mean, Kai Havertz just didn't play enough. Odegaard was in and out with injuries. Saka was in and out with injuries, and clearly, even when he was playing, was not at 100%. Like, that offensive talent just wasn't playing particularly well, or wasn't able to play in a lot of cases. Where was the strength of the team? The keeper, central defense, and then a Declan Rice in the midfield. That was the consistent metric of the consistent part of the team. To a lesser extent, Jury and Timber, and I say only lesser extent because obviously we haven't seen him for a while now, unfortunately.
Right.
But obviously Timber is a big part of that as well. So, like, I think it's a way to think about that as well. The defense is the foundation of this team, and we kind of pushed forward from that. And look, the old line is that defense wins championships. Now, I don't think you necessarily need to be great defensively to do it. I mean, look at Liverpool last year. They were a little soft in the back at points, but they scored enough goals. It didn't matter.
Right.
You got to be true to yourself in a lot of ways. And I think that's sort of our identity. We enjoy the 1-0 to the Arsenal and the callback to the George Graham days. And that's fun because it makes everybody mad and all of that. But also, like, I don't think that's ultimately what we want. I just think that was the best way to get where we wanted to be with what we had.
Yeah, no, that all adds up. I can see that. How has the rest of the league changed around Arsenal? Like, we have a very Arsenal strong focus on the show most of the time. But how does the rest of the league compare in that regard as far as tactics and stuff?
So this is another piece we'll throw out there. This is John McKenzie writing about tactics. It's called "Did You Notice the Premier League Has Changed?" Sort of an overview of the season. He makes a couple points about the way teams are playing. Possession has become less controlling. I'm just going to read the headlines here. The way teams possess the ball has changed. Just scrolling through the piece. Where's the third one? The way teams attack has changed. And then there was a fourth one, I believe. The way teams defend is changing again. And he sort of talks about how things have changed in terms of where teams are applying their strength. And Arsenal is a part of this story. I think part of the larger story is that Arsenal is driving these tactical changes. It's kind of nice to read a tactics article that isn't like, oh, it's all set pieces. No, it's not. There's a lot of interesting things about where teams are setting themselves up. He talks a lot about the high block that we saw from City at Wembley in the Carabao Cup and how we saw other teams doing that. And obviously, the different moving between zonal marking, sort of more defending spaces versus a man-to-man marking, which you're seeing also in some other places. Where teams are attempting to pressure each other, at their height with under Pep, Manchester City was about possession, sort of the Spanish tiki-taka of the 2010s, right? Control the ball, control the game, squeeze the life out of it. And we're kind of moving in a different direction there. And in England, in the Premier League game is being played differently in that. And I think it's really kind of a nice sort of interesting look at the league as a whole. Obviously, Arsenal is an important part of this. What they're doing, but also that it's, there's a lot of other things that are happening sort of beneath that kind of surface analysis, of which Arsenal is a part of, but not always necessarily because they've changed the game. That's kind of a lot of times there's conversations about like how the champion sort of sets the tone, and now everybody it's a copycat league, right? Everyone wants to do what the champs are doing, and I think his article rightly points out that's not really what's going on here or what's likely to go on.
Right. Yeah, that's all fair. I'll read that as soon as I can. It looks interesting. Lastly, before we exit the news section, World Cup is just around the corner, and countries all over the world are announcing their squads. How is Arsenal doing as far as their ranks?
So as of today, Wednesday, with the announcement of the Netherlands squad, there are 15 Arsenal players set to go to come to America for the 2026 World Cup this summer. Quickly, Gabriel Magalhaes and Gabriel Martinelli will both be there for Brazil. Kai Havertz for Germany. Jurrien Timber for the Netherlands. Victor Gyökeres for Sweden. Leandro Trossard for Belgium. For Spain, David Raya, Mikel Merino, and Martin Zubimendi. William Saliba with France. Martin Odegaard with Norway, and then there are 4 English players tied for the most on the team, the English squad. Declan Rice, Bukayo Saka, Eberechi Eze, and Noni Madueke are all going to be going to the World Cup this summer.
So our entire first team, and then a few others, basically.
Well, yeah. I'm just looking through. Has Ecuador announced there's Ecuador is in the World Cup, right? Nope, this is Ecuador, the country. Sorry. Hold on. I know. Gonna do this live.
So, as far as some historical perspective, like if we go back 4 years before Arsenal was as good as they are now, and we're just kind of beginning this rebuild, how many would you expect to see playing internationally in the World Cup?
It's kind of a mix. I recall, I think gosh, and now I'm going to make me go back and look up numbers on this. I feel like this is obviously a little bit higher than we've had in recent times. And again, some of these are kind of interesting cases. Take a look at Riccardo Calafiori. He would definitely be going, except Italy didn't make it. Christian Norgard definitely be going, except Denmark didn't make it. Jakob Kivior, who's technically still an Arsenal player, although he's officially now somewhere else, but I mean, he would go with Poland if they were making it.
Right.
Oh gosh, I was just looking at someone. Yes, I was looking at Ecuador. Piero Hincapié. Ecuador has not announced their squad yet, but I thoroughly expect Hincapié to be on it. So he'll be 16 players. So it's always kind of an interesting one in this case because Arsenal is definitely stocked with players from England, Brazil, France, Germany. Like you think about where so many of those players are coming from those kind of squads that are going to Spain, they're going to be in the World Cup. And that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I'm vamping apart because I don't quite remember any particular numbers. This is definitely more than we've had in I think probably the last couple World Cup cycles.
I remember when we've talked about Raya internationally in the past, he has not been Spain's number one. Is he still like Spain's backup keeper, or has he moved up?
Well, we're not really going to know, of course, until until they announce. Let's just take a look at who else they called up. Unai Simon, David Raya, and Joan Garcia. Simon has generally been their starter. I kind of expect him to be between the sticks for Spain when the time comes. I mean, Raya would be a perfect good choice. Joan Garcia is there with Barcelona. I mean, like that wouldn't be a bad choice either. But it'll be interesting to see. Interesting note about the Spanish squad: for the first time ever, there are no Real Madrid players on Spain, which is interesting.
I mean, how many Spanish players does Real Madrid have in the first place? I mean, they have a lot of internationals.
They have a few, but I'm guessing it's not as necessarily Spanish heavy as it typically is. I mean, typically for the longest time, it was Real Madrid and Barcelona made up the Spanish team with a sprinkling of guys from Villarreal, Valencia, Atletico, Bilbao. Let's see if I can get a roster here.
But yeah, I mean, when I think of Real Madrid, all the players who I think of are not Spanish.
I mean, let's see. Well, Dean Howson is kind of the defender is kind of the big sort of not there. It's Danny Ceballos, but I feel like he's a little older. Yeah, that's right. Former Arsenal man, Danny Ceballos. Yeah. I mean, like Danny Carvajal has played on the national team, and they have they have a lot of them, but a lot of it's going to be youth players, guys you haven't heard of as much. Yeah, I mean, you look at the key players. Federico Valverde is from Uruguay. Arda Güler is Turkish. Tchouaméni, French. Kylian Mbappe, Camavinga, French. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Jude Bellingham. Rodrigo, Endrick, Vinny Jr., Eder Militao are all Brazilians.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's kind of an interesting quirk of where they are currently, that Real doesn't have a lot of Spaniards playing centrally for the side as they have in the past. I did see a couple of former Arsenal players that I did see. Sad Kolasinac will be playing for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then because the U.S. team it was leaked on Friday, but was officially announced yesterday, Tuesday, Austin Trusty, who was briefly on Arsenal's squad, who's currently now in Celtic in the Scottish Premier League. He will be going with Team USA. So a few, and there's probably some others. Those are just the ones I happen to notice. So there's a few former Gunners lurking about as well.
Yeah.